Happy holidays, Gazeboids. We're here in the holiday season to bring you more tabletop RPG content. It is Fireball the Gazebo. Vince, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, when this releases, it is the Christmas week. This is like technically the last show before the holiday. So I am, as this is releasing, I am prepping up to play in a marathon game. I'm doing another marathon right after Christmas. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, listeners, if you did not catch our full episode on marathon games, make sure you go back and check that out. And then you can live vicariously through Vince as he plays through another one. What system are you playing? What game system are you playing for this?
This is a second edition D&D campaign. We're doing 3 days. It's called Calimport Nights. So we're set in the city of Calimport in the second edition time period for Calimport, which is not as nice of a place as they most recently released in the Forgotten Realms thing.
Oh.
And it's a city built on the backs of really horrible things, basically. A lot of the downtrodden of humanity serving the sort of 1% who are leading. And that's fine because I am going to be taking a strong stance as a revolutionary. Before the game starts, I killed one of the princes of the city, like one of the sort of little princelings who runs part of the wards. And I plan to lead a full-scale revolution to topple the masters. That's my goal. That's where I'm taking this marathon. I don't know where the GM intends to go, but I'm intending to go for revolution.
Viva la revolution. Yeah,
that's right.
It always worked out well for the French. I'm sure it will for you as well.
Well, when the newest, because in the new Forgotten Realms adventures that they just published, the hero book and the adventure book, Calimshan is now like a much more not so slave driven city. I was like, and it's set later in time, obviously, because it's in the time period of the 5th edition. And I was like, oh, we were successful in the marathon. See, look, that's what happened. We did it. We did that.
This is all canon. Yeah. I assume your character's name is Gavroche or something like that to be really fitting of this setting. I assume you're also going to sing all of your lines throughout this revolution.
I assume you're making a Les Miserables reference?
Yes.
Is that what this is?
Yes.
You know, Les Miserables is not set during, like, specifically, like, that's not exactly the story of Les Miserables in that way.
I mean, it's happening kind of in French in that era, there was always just about a revolution happening.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yes,
just about happening.
No, my character is not French, and I'm going to strongly resist the urge. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you all to just, who are watching this, I'd like you all to just understand what just happened here. John set me up with a question that I could have said in response, well, let me tell you about my character. Truly the worst thing you can ever do to someone.
I'm a terrible
and I am going to resist that urge and go on by.
Good. Yeah, you can tell us about it afterwards in your horrible, horrible death at the hands of, I'm assuming, a cannon. I'm guessing your demise at the end of this weekend will come from a cannon. That's my, and I hope.
I'll go down swinging. That's all I'm going to say.
I hope your GM listens to this and he makes that happen. All right, now on to real story time, Vince. Real story time. Any stories from your latest session, your latest campaign that you want to share with the class?
I do. I want to talk about distracted DMing.
Uh-oh.
I had a unique experience this last week. So running my normal Tuesday game, the party had finished sort of the big disease arc, and they were sort of transitioning into kind of what's happening next. And basically my wife was in the middle of like a huge deliverable for the end of the year for her work. So she was like, I tried to be the DM, and she keeps the little dog. We have this new little puppy that's a terror. And one of the things the dog will do sometimes at some points during the day is just decide that every 10 minutes, the dog wants to go out and potty every 10 minutes.
Well,
okay.
I mean,
for like 90 minutes straight.
Oh, just to smell and get into trouble.
Yeah. So it's a problem. Anyways, so my wife brings that. She's like, I have to finish this. I can't do it. Like, she was clearly at the end of her rope. She's about to lose her mind. Right. And I said, okay, I'll take the dog. So I had to take the dog as it's running around like a holy terror. This is like a 4-month-old puppy, right? That is chewing on everything and 5 seconds away from peeing or pooping on my floor at any given point in time. So I have to be very mindful. Can't leave her alone for a second. So I'm like DMing as I'm walking around the table, following the dog, chasing her, playing with toys, sitting on the floor, standing in other parts, like in a different room. I'm like listening and yelling back at them as I chase her around. And it was a fascinating thing because the like it was interesting what I could and couldn't do. And I
Okay.
apologized to everybody. I was like, look, normally I try to be really in touch with each of you as to like who's being distracted or losing engagement or stuff like that. And I try to make sure that like a moment comes up for you. I just can't do that in this game. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found I was doing was playing to the back of the theater.
Ah.
Okay. So because I was like up and moving around as I was, because I'm like walking after the dog, picking her up, playing with a toy, doing these things. I'm like very active. It felt more like I was doing theater,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Because I'm like walking around. What I can do a lot is like talk as the NPCs. That's very easy, right? I know what they're going
Right.
to say. I can talk in character. I can answer the PC's questions. And so, like, the NPCs all became like really loud and engaged, right? Because I have to always be ready to draw their attention from potentially the room away. I'm not focusing them at the front of the room,
Right.
right? And so, I just noticed like halfway through that I was doing this, and I was like, "This is." It wasn't intentional. It just came
Sure.
up. And so it was just fascinating. It makes me want to DM more and like stand up and kind of move around a little more where I'm not like actually actively distracted. Right.
Right.
And like I'm not saying I want to chase the dog all the time. But it does feel like, I mean, normally when you're a GM, you sit in your chair and you kind of talk. You're like the
Yeah.
judge. You just, lord over it, right? The judge is ready to rule.
Yep.
But this was so much more engaging. And I don't know, I've never really like stood up and walked around too much while I was GMing for extended periods of time. This is like an hour and a half this went on, by the way. And I was like, there's something here. There's something here I'm going to explore.
I think so too. I think a change in environment, a change in posture, a change in just like the way that your body is reacting, especially after decades for you at this point of things always going the same way. You sit in the same chair, you have the same DM screen up, you have your notes in the right order, you have your dice tray where it always is. And
yes, I'm literally using my original DM screen that I got in like 1991 or something, or 92, whenever they released it.
So it's just like real life, Vince. A change of scenery can make all the difference in how your perspective on things are, even though you're still the same you. And I think that there's something there. I mean, you don't want to necessarily go to the point of like then you're play acting and you're pacing as the king as he talks to the players. Necessarily, like there's a point of going too far, unless that is what you as a DM really like. It really gets you, or you really engage with that, and you feel like you can play as a character better that way. But that's not what we're talking about necessarily. I think that really just kind of like opens your mind to taking a step back and like, what are we doing? What's going on? What you pay attention to now has changed in a way, but not better or worse. It's just different, and it allows you,
Yeah, the one thing I couldn't do for sure, obviously, walking around was roll dice.
Right.
Right. That was like the thing I could not do.
Right.
So like situations just had to be resolved through narration and role playing, right? Like I had to be like, keep pushing them to role play harder. And I'm like, I'm not going to make you make a roll, just role play harder. Right. And we can get through this.
And that'll have an effect on like how you react to any statement, any situation or whatever by the NPCs, because you are pushing the action in dramatic ways because you need this to keep going.
Right. Yeah. I can't just say make a check or initiative or something like that. Right. I can't just say those things.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to keep it. And again, if you're playing the back of the audience, that you also have to keep the back of the audience engaged. So you're like being overly dramatic in those moments, as opposed to you're sitting in your chair. I'm comfortable in all the resources at my disposal that I can just let our natural course of a game happen and it'll work itself out. Here, you're like, it's almost like to bring in our other life that we spend in miniature painting. It's like putting a restriction on yourself in painting a miniature.
Absolutely. You can only use a certain brush, only so many paints. It changes your perspective on the thing. Yeah, 100%.
Right. And that doesn't mean that the miniature comes out painted worse. And that doesn't mean that this session came out playing worse. It was those restrictions force creativity and force evolution in how you approach something. And sometimes in a really satisfying way. Oh,
Yeah.
I dig that. I think I want to do that too.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, you got to do it. Like, give it a try. Like, walk around more and just like be up for an extended period of time, not just like a minute or two. Like,
Yeah.
try to be up and around for an extended period of time and watch how you change what you're doing.
I think probably the factor is, and you tell me, you were kind of forced to do this. You've got to do it at least until you're uncomfortable doing it, and then continue it that much longer. If it
Correct.
took you 30 minutes to get uncomfortable, then do it another 30 minutes minimum.
That's
Because
right.
in that uncomfortability, that's where the change is going to happen. It's not going to happen if I get up for 5 minutes and then whatever, and they're like, okay, fine, whatever. Now I sit down to roll initiative. I'm like, oh, did I really do anything different then?
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Good story. I really dig that one. That is when I saw it written down as distracted DMing, I thought, oh man, you're just going to shit on your DM. But no, you are the DM.
Look
My
at me.
story.
Look at me.
It's you.
Look at me. I am the captain now. Okay, go ahead.
This morning, I just watched Captain Phillips on Netflix while I was painting.
Okay.
Did you know that the young Somalian man from that movie is from Minnesota? That's the state I'm from, ladies and gentlemen. He's not an actor, and he was up for Best Supporting Actor, an Oscar for that role.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know he's from Minnesota. I knew the other part.
Yeah. My little story is, it's titled "What's the Goal of Combat?" Now,
the age-old question.
The age-old question. Now, leading up to this latest session, we had gone 2 full sessions without a fight. We were ready to fight. And this session started off as we had rented a boat. We took the boat downriver to go under the city, and kind of these underground, the deep caverns of the city, that the old city is in these ruins underground and the new city was built above. And going down there, you kind of got to do this little like scary Oregon trail. The waterway gets harsh and whatever. And we had to do some fun skill challenge of getting down there and keeping our boat in check. And we were keeping track of boat hit points and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And eventually we get down through, and we are beset by a big old fat sea serpent thing. And as well as we had disturbed the bats. So there's bats like flying around us, trying to nip at us.
Good bat noises.
This big, thank you. This big sea serpent, bigger than our boat, is like going up and down under the waves, and is trying to ram our boat and crash us and munch on us once we get in the water, that kind of a thing. And we enter the fight, and immediately we are given an instruction that there is setting up rules of someone being able to steer the boat and have the boat continue. So if we wanted to keep going down the river, and if you had multiple people running oars, whatever, but then it takes you out of the fight. Really, really fun, dynamic fight, unique side to it. Anytime you add an extra variable like that, it just makes it feel more lively and dramatic. So that was really cool. And it was a chase of us like beating off this monster, beating away this monster, and
there we go.
And
better
and trying to steer the ship and trying to deal with the bats. And at one point I cast web on the sea monster to try to get him caught in this little, my fisherman's net, my magical fisherman's net, and that worked for a little bit till it broke free. And at a point, the waves are crashing, the bats are surrounding us, and my character yells, "What's the point of all this?" And the other guys look at me and they're like, "What do you mean? We're trying not to die." I'm like, "No, we're trying to get to the Undercity. Just row." And we were just like, we had come to realize the DM I think he did it on purpose. He said the monster used one of its legendary resistance rerolls or whatever. And I was like, fuck this. Our goal is to get out of here alive.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like, and it caught the DM off guard a little bit that we weren't just going to fight his fight. Like, we were still engaging. We were still doing stuff. We were still trying to, those of us that had control abilities got to shine in this fight because we were trying to slow it down. I tried cast web on it. I tried to cast, I think, daze or something like that, and to try to get it and try to throw the, use sonic attacks to try to throw the bats off. And so they wouldn't fly after us. But really at the end of the day, it was like, we were trying to get far enough ahead of it that we could get into the city. And it was like, it felt like a victory, and we didn't kill the big boss, and we only killed like one bat. And so it was like a reminder. It's like, I think every fight is to think that most fights, I think any fight, if you think any fight in your role playing game is about murdering them before murdering you, if it's only that if then statement and there's no other alternatives and there's no other creative solutions, if you start looking at it single minded, I think you set yourself up for having a lot less fun in the potential of what could be. And this was a kind of a cut and dry example of it, because we were just trying to get where we are to our destination. And it's a big sea serpent. It's not like he's got big old pockets full of gold on him, right? You know, that always the shinies are what get you. We weren't enticed by those things, but I think it stretches further. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've certainly been in similar situations where you realize, like, not that like you're over, because you weren't saying like, oh, we can't win this fight, we got to run.
No,
you were saying the fight isn't actually the fight. That's not the point of why we're here. We've lost the plot is effectively what you're saying, like in character, right? And I've had similar experiences before where we realized that, like, oh, actually what we're trying to do here is this other thing. Let's just stop fighting and focus on the other thing, right? Oftentimes that'll come up if you ever tried to like disrupt or complete a ritual or something and there's a fight going on. You'll often see that kind of mechanic happening, right? Where there's some secondary goal that is sort of prioritized above winning the fight in the immediate sense, right?
Right. It's a little forest through the trees moments, right?
Yeah.
You get stuck in and you don't see what your character would more than likely, like, what is their priority there, you know?
Right. Yeah. And my answer is, I think you always have to keep that in mind, but I think that the right mix of fights is just that, a mix. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like some fights should have the option to never become fights because you can talk your way out of them. Or this is where like one of the things that's in second edition is reaction checks. When you just randomly bump into something, assuming they're not outwardly like aggressively trying to kill you for some reason. Okay. You have a reaction check. And are they like you? It's based on what your demeanor is versus their demeanor, and you roll a dice, and then you get to either like they're hostile, they're indifferent, they're friendly, stuff like that, right? And PCs can have bonuses to it and stuff based on their charisma. I like that because it sets an expectation that not every fight is a fight.
Sure.
Okay, like at the beginning, if you're a very charismatic, charming party, who's then you can talk yourself out of just a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's fine. That's good. There should always, like, not always, but there should often be options to talk, to negotiate, to do those kinds of things. Though some fights I think are just good to be fights to the death, and that's fine. You're fighting like a group of undead, some demons, I don't know, like a bunch of constructs that are set to guard an area you're trying to get to, right? And you have to kill the stone guardians to get into the nave of the sacred temple. Like, okay, that's a fight to the death, right? Like that's what it is. Now you could just choose to run away, of course, in a lot of those cases, but they're there to fight. And then I think also sometimes it's good to seat fights amongst larger narrative constructs, and that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's not that the fight didn't have a purpose, it's that you already had a purpose and the fight happened amidst a larger purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And so that may or may not be essential to keep doing it. By the by, way back in the day, they used to do these dungeon runs, competition dungeon runs, like competitive D&D. This is like back in the late 70s, early 80s. Okay. And it was like, who could complete these ridiculously mega dungeons the fastest? All right. Uh-huh. And the person who ended up like setting the bar for this and kind of like showing, like ruining the whole thing, one of my personal heroes, they came in with a monk who was tooled up because you were relatively high level. You could buy a bunch of magic items and stuff like that, like whatever. They came in with a monk that was tooled up with every item in the game that gave them speed and flight. Okay.
Literally speed ran it.
And they literally speed ran the dungeon. Yes. They ran away from every fight. They just literally zipped through before the monsters could react. They could fly over every trap, never trigger things, just and they went straight to the end. And like it was like it was a speed run type of thing where they had completed it, 50 times faster than the nearest competitor because they just ran to the heart of the dungeon. That's what I was thinking of when you guys were like, no, stop fighting, just row,
just row. Yeah, that's it. And I think though, to respond to your thoughts on things about sometimes they just having fights that are straightforward fights. It's a value in and of itself. And I agree with that. I think sometimes, though, your players will take a situation that had a lot of opportunities to not be fights, and they still chose violence, right? They're still like,
Sure.
we're just going to fight it. So
Sure.
if they do that, which is going to happen in most campaigns, I think you need to be open as a GM if they're getting creative or they're starting to like look at it a different way, that you're like, this is just a straight up group of skeletons or whatever. If they want to Indiana Jones it and they're like crawling up the walls and they're like causing a little cave in or whatever to avoid the fight, and they dealt with the skeletons because they can't reason with them, like
Right.
allow that in what was set
For
up
sure.
to be a regular fight. But like all things, a balance will find itself. And as a DM, you have the control over that. If they're trying to fiddle their way through to never draw a blade, you can just make people angry and have them draw their blades. Like, you have control over that. But I think that balance is really valuable. And it stood out to me. The specific example stood out to me that it was a moment of me thinking about how my character would, because we're so knee deep in initiative is rolled, people are slinging spells, people are attacking.
Yeah,
all this
yeah.
stuff.
But you went back to what your character would think.
Right. Like, he's like,
Yeah.
and that's why he yells in the chaos of the boat. He's like, we need to get out of here. Let's just go. And then the other players, they look at me and they're like, oh yeah. So like,
Yeah,
sometimes
it snapped the illusion.
it did.
Right?
It was like, oh,
Yeah.
if we're there, we're about self-preservation. We have a goal to go to. And that was really cool. The other thing that really stood out to me was that, like I said, we hadn't gotten in a fight in multiple sessions. We should be drooling at the idea of a fight, and we were. But when that realization happened and the information was shared between characters, they understood and they were on board. And it turned from it, that the fight was then over. Assuming we got away, it was still drama and it still wasn't easy to get away. That thing was faster than the boat. So how did we figure that out? And that kind of was a new challenge. And so it still felt rewarding at the end.
Nice.
Okay, let's do a little bit of news and then dig into our main topic, because we got a juicy one today.
Sounds good. All right. Well, we'll be quick through our little bit of news. Honestly, it's the end of the year. There's not a ton of news right now. People don't tend to do a lot of like new announcements in the last, sort of 2 weeks of the year, shockingly.
Right.
But we got truly this week a little bit of news. The first one I thought was really interesting. So Temeraire, which is like this, it's a series of books. Okay. And it's coming to like RPG form, released from Magpie Games next year in 2026. So we're going to do the show eventually. I will browbeat John into this show of playing in historical time periods. Okay. Well, this is one of those games. This is like dragons exist and they're real, and it's during the Napoleonic Wars.
I've read this entire book. I've read this entire book series. So
oh, good. Okay, cool. So you're familiar with this,
and it's because it's French. It's Temeraire.
I apologize.
Go ahead. Yes,
thank you.
I'm in for this. It's about a decade ago I read all these books, but okay, this would be. This is my kind of real world history.
Yeah, this is what we're going to talk about in the show, John.
Okay,
this is how you incorporate fantastical elements into the history. At any rate, yeah, I thought this was pretty cool because obviously, like in the story, I have never read the books, but you have. From what I am to understand in reading the announcement of the thing, it's very focused on like the dragons and their riders and all of that stuff, and that some nations treat them much more poorly and some nations treat them much better, and there's like the different kind of status of that, even though these are intelligent creatures, they're not just beasts, as it were.
Yeah, and they have like
that interplay.
They're like paired at birth. They have some kind of like emotional connection, dragon and rider, so it's like they are one being, and they can communicate with each other, but also they are a war machine. If you think about it from a historical perspective, there is no other magic in this world. Everything is the history of man as we know it. There's just also dragons. So they were the Abrams tank before an Abrams tank existed.
Yeah, sure. One that you're emotionally bonded to that can fly around and breathe fire. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously you like they're exploring that in the game by all accounts because you're playing as like the dragon and the rider is what I'm to understand, or something like that. Like that relationship is explored. We don't have a lot of details yet, but I thought it sounded pretty cool. I Didn't know anything about the book series before I read this announcement. It seems like a very cool book series I would like.
It is.
And like I said, I love. I apologize. I mispronounced that, which is really a spite on me since I actually do speak some amount of French. But at any rate, this just seemed like a really cool thing. And the Napoleonic era is. I'm running a game right now that's about to like an ongoing marathon that we've been doing over the past couple of years that's about to drift into the Napoleonic era.
Oh, you need to read these books then. They're quick reads. They're page turner books. They're very, very good. Yeah. I think you'll get some really good inspiration and some thoughts for your campaign too.
Very nice. All right. Next up on our little bit of news, Draw Steel, which obviously I know there's been a lot of discussion about. The sort of 4th edition D&D enthusiasts are very happy to have a game that's, more tactical, more focused to the kind of thing that they enjoyed about that particular edition.
There are literally dozens of us.
Well, there's at least 6,000 of you, it turns out.
No. There are 6,000 people that like Matt Colville.
That could also be true.
Asterisk, Vince.
That could also be true. But Draw Steel, Crack the Sun is on backer kit. This ends January 6th. As of the time now, I think there's already 6,000 backers. That was when I collected this information. I'm sure it's different as you're watching this, right? And this is really big. So the most popular tier is like $199 tier. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you might think, well, what am I getting for that? Well, you're getting 7 books for that, John.
Damn. That's a pretty good deal per book.
Yeah. So it's 3 source books and then 4 full adventure books, one of which is called Crack the Sun or whatever. And like, I'm to understand that a couple of them are shorter, whereas a couple of them are more long, like shorter adventure snippet type of things you can kind of spice around. And 2 of them are like longer campaign arc type of things. So
cool.
Speaking very much about what we're going to be talking about today.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. So I'm just thinking of what was the cost for production of those books that they can sell 7 for $200 and still make a good profit, because they had to know that was going to be the number one thing. So my guess is it costs them between $8 and $11 per book for cost. And remind yourself every time that you buy a $50 Wizards of the Coast hardcover book that cost them $8 to make.
Sure. Well, the actual printing is probably that. But yes, like keep in mind, there's a lot of whatever. Big companies the economics are hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of other bloat around that.
And Matt Colville's company is not massive. So I imagine they're running at a thin margin would be my answer after they pay artists and layout and everything else. So, at any rate, that seems cool.
That's cool. Have they delivered on the core books yet? They have to have. Yeah, they have.
Yes.
But I mean, the timing of this, I've always been a bit sus about timing of the next Kickstarter when the previous Kickstarter was just fulfilled and people don't know if it was good or not when it's related to specifically RPGs. They haven't had time to play a 20 session campaign yet, but they have the FOMO of you've got to buy it now. The timing of this was not happenstance. I will say that. That doesn't mean the game's good, bad, or otherwise. I'm just saying they do that to make you want to buy it right away.
It's called striking when the iron's hot. Right. Yes, absolutely.
Right. I hope it's good. There are aspects of 4th edition that I really like. The one I don't is time. So we'll see how combat in this game works. So we'll see. I'm going to buy it.
By all accounts. People who a lot of people talk up this game very highly. So we'll do it's a game I want to get my hands on at some point and do a full review on. Yeah. Okay. Then the last little bit of news, something I thought you'd be very interested in. So the Twilight Sword, obviously, I'm pretty sure you're one of these backers. I think you did end up backing this. Their backer kit campaign concluded. What I thought was fascinating was I think there is a real thirst for these other kinds of games. I've seen a couple of people like Dungeon Craft had a video go up that talked about like the future is indie. Okay. And so obviously this is from Free League, and this is like sort of the Legend of Zelda inspired / several other types of things. It's a JRPG, and it concluded with 701,000 EU pledges, like €701,000, sorry, pledged, and like about 5,200 backers. So again, very, very successful, certainly by the standards of a not mainline biggest name game. And I just think there's a real thirst out there for these kinds of alternative experiences and game systems and stuff like that. And I think that's great. I think it's
Yeah.
great that so many other game systems are flourishing now. Especially, I love to see these influences from other things, like to see some of these. We've talked about Sword World,
Yep.
seeing this kind of a thing, right? I want to see more of these things get into the mix here and sort of like dislodge some of the stunted nature of the current fantasy. So it's good.
Yeah. Because I think like for forever, it felt like there was a log jam of like, well, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you can make your Dungeons and Dragons game whatever you want it to be. Like it could be in any setting, it could be anything, blah, 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 blah. But if you sat and played it, you realize that that's not exactly the truth. That like you'd have to make a bunch of your own rules. You'd have to restructure it some way. You'd have to have in a feel. Like I think something we've learned as more and more of these indie games have caught fire and we've had a lot more choice is that the biggest thing to me in reading through the books and playing one shots of these games is that they feel different. And
Yes.
that in leaning into that feel to create the kind of game you want to create is it's not so simple as how a DM runs their game. It is how the systems fit together like puzzle pieces to encourage you and to guide you in a way to play a game with that feel to it. And that's why I'm excited about it. So you can find something that your group all enjoys that kind of a thing and you've got something to play.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, it's the old statement of like, this has been something that's been in media criticism for a long time. The old statement of the medium is the message, right? In other words, like a message reads differently in a 90-second ad on television than it does on the radio, than it does if you write a book about it, than it does if you do a 3-hour podcast about it.
Yep.
Right. Like those are the message might be the same, but it's going to read and sound and feel very different in all cases.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's the same with the role playing where like, yeah, you could hammer D&D into almost anything. That's why it's endured. That's the strength of the thing. Right. But that doesn't mean there's not value in having a bespoke rules experience that is aligned to do a particular thing and increase the sort of verisimilitude of that experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm all for it. Just like I'm all for pharmaceutical commercials that in 60 seconds convince you that you should get this drug instead of having a conversation with your doctor. But that's neither here nor there. What we are going to talk about today is sandbox game versus roller coaster games. And this is a big one. This I am so pumped to talk about. I think there's a lot to be said, and this is a lot more nuanced. And I think after this discussion, I think you're going to be excited to run your own game if you haven't. I think you're going to be able to see the matrix of the game if you're a player that you play in and how to best engage in it and get the most fun out of it. And we're going to kind of dissect what these are and how they work. So I think we start off, Vince, first by defining what is a sandbox game and what is a roller coaster game in the RPG realm.
Yeah. So sandbox is generally taken to mean sort of an open world thing. There are arcs, there's incentives, and there's things that happen in the world, and your players are dropped into the middle of it, and you walk around. Okay. And you just see what happens. You bop around the world, you get into stuff. Right? Like things all happen, timelines progress. You wander into town, somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I need your help," right? And so on and so forth, right? But you could have just easily knock onto that town, and then that person never got helped, and their kid never got rescued from the dragon or whatever happened, right? Okay,
yeah. It's a lot more of players making decisions and choices, and oftentimes, especially when this is not done well, oftentimes without very much information to decide where to go. It's the kind of game that you get to look at the world map or the country map a lot.
Sure. Yeah, both of these have a dark side. Okay, so
we'll get into that. Maybe I jumped the shark.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But yes, you're absolutely right. So that's generally the idea of a sandbox would be it's sort of this open world thing, right? Where you can move around and explore what you want. Okay, and kind of do what you want when you want. A roller coaster game is a game that I think people are now just more familiar with. but it's a crafted game with a beginning, middle, and end, right? Think of it more like a movie or a television show or something like that, right? Like, or at least a well-written television show, I suppose.
There's a lot of TV shows that seasons 3, 4, and 5 feel like a sandbox.
Sure, because they didn't craft the roller coaster well enough. Yeah, they had like the first 2 seasons in mind, and then after that, they were just like, I don't know, we didn't think we'd be here.
Right.
So yeah. Okay. Battlestar Galactica comes to mind, even though it's one of my favorite shows of all time. It very much has that feel where we started in that way, and then they were like, what are we doing now? Roller coaster games tend to feel like you're going through a novel, through a movie, through something like that, right? It centers, here's an important difference. It centers the PCs in the world. You are, as the PCs, the protagonist of this story. Okay? In a sandbox game, you may be special, you may not, but you're not the center of the world. Like, the world very much is expected to be happening and continuing. And like, there are other heroes and adventurers and villains and plots and things you will never touch or get into. Maybe you don't even hear about them. You're just kind of roughly aware that they're occurring, right? In a roller coaster game, more or less the story is centered on you as the PCs, right? You're going through some experience. I'm not saying you're like necessarily the chosen ones or have some fated destiny of glory. It's just the story is largely happening around you.
Yeah.
Right.
The camera is almost always fixed on your action. As boring as you sometimes are, we're still staring at you.
Yeah. And like, if you think of the Dragons trilogy, we've talked about it before. I think it's one of the absolutely like foundational texts of, modern D&D and role playing. That story very much plays out like, now to the players, I'm not sure how they experienced it, but to us reading it, because that was played through. Like, for the first novel, it was played through in real time. Okay. But to them, like to us reading it now, it's a roller coaster. We're focused on these characters, right? They're our POV. The story happens around them. They find the plates. They're helping bring the gods back to the world. They're at the center of the Dragon's War, like bop, 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 bop.
Yep.
Right.
The only time in that story where the camera shifts is when the party is split, and then you're dealing with subsets of the party that you're hopping between those. That's it.
Right. Yep. Which does happen quite a lot in that story, as it does in most stories, like drawing on like Lord of the Rings before it, right?
But not in and there's a key point there, but not in your D&D games. Those games don't happen that way. Your game doesn't happen that way. So it's really tough when it's just like, it's always on U5 all the time. Everything you do, it's just you.
Yeah, it's really hard to do like the Frodo and Sam go off to Mordor while, Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas go to Rohan type of game, unless you're like literally playing on different nights, like a Western Marches game where you're playing with different groups, like what Critical Role Campaign 4 is doing right now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of the overall thing. Very quickly, I want to talk about downsides, both of these, but I want to explore this in more detail. I just want to lay out some quick thoughts, okay?
Right.
The sandbox, when it's bad, is called the desert, okay?
Ooh,
because, yes, it's big and open, and you can technically do whatever you want, but it's equally boring and hopeless in all directions. And unless you have a very, very, very engaged party who will hunt out the oases, it's just going to be a bunch of nothing and listless driving around, right? Or rolling around. The roller coaster game, when it's bad, becomes the railroad. Still on tracks, but a roller coaster is meant to be a fun experience where you're excited by every new twist and turn in the track. And like you get off it going, yay, that was a fun time. A railroad is something you use to transport grain from one city to another.
And hobos. You don't want to be the hobos that hopped on the boring train ride to go from Kansas City to Lincoln, okay? That doesn't want to be you.
And it's just like, choo-choo, this is the next stop, right? Where it just feels inevitable. It's like, okay, yep, we're at this stop. We do this thing. Okay, great. Cool. Next. And you're just like, you're just ticking boxes until you get to the end of the story. Yay, we killed the big bad guy. Okay, we did it. The world is saved. Woo. It was always going to happen, right? Like, That's the dark side of those games.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to share a little bit of the real world examples of the dark side of these two.
Yeah, we should talk about both these because I mean, again, we show what we like and our own experiences. Yeah, hit me. Go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to see which one I want to start with first. Okay. Sandbox game. Sandbox game can be really rough, especially for a new or inexperienced GM, because you have to be very much proactive. Going back to your friend who is your favorite GM before, a really great listener, a really reactive to the players' thoughts. Examples where this can also go poorly would be if you have a very reactive group. If you have a group that you have nobody in the group that takes charge, or you have one person that takes charge and everyone feels like they're being led by the hand by this player about like, let's go check out that tree. All right, let's go over that hill. All right, let's go see what's in that cave. And it can be very, very difficult and can get kind of repetitive in that regard. Also, it asks a lot of you to stay on top of what I would call time wasting or time sucking. It's so easy for you to play 4 or 5 or 6 or 60 sections in a sandbox game and shit doesn't happen because they're just checking under every single rock, or they're walking around and they're not doing anything of value. And that's not entirely their fault. In fact, I wouldn't say it's their fault at all. It's because you don't know how to grab the reins and how to direct them and how to actually make that story parts that are happening in the world touch them. You have to do it with velvet gloves on to make sure that you're like weaving the information about all this thing, that this world feels so alive and all these things are happening so they can make active decisions. And if that isn't done consistently and really well, it turns into a desert really quick.
Yeah. Yes. You have to actually throw out a lot of little hooks that you know are just going to lie fallow.
Right.
Because it makes the world feel real. And that is another thing. To me, I will say I'm a little more predisposed to a sandbox style game than I am to a roller coaster style game, though I like both and have played both. But I like the feeling that the world is happening whether or not I'm present. Right. Like that the sort of idea that like there's a bunch of other people in this world living full realized lives besides you. I'll give you a good example from the most recent week. Okay. So the PCs have a piece in my current Tuesday game. The PCs have a piece of this like incredibly evil artifact. Okay. Like think One Ring level artifact. Like this is not good. It's not a thing you want to have on you. Okay.
Oh. Okay.
And it's an artifact that corrupts anything it touches over time. Okay. The more powerful the thing, the more dangerous this is to be near it. So again, like very One Ringy, right? Like there's a reason Gandalf and Galadriel and all these characters want nothing to do with the ring, right? Like they know if they pick that thing up, it would be the end. Right. Okay. And so this presents a challenge because the wizard can't he's like, well, I'll put it in a box and I'll arcane lock it. And somebody else is like, well, if you arcane lock it, that's just giving it more magic to corrupt more quickly. Right. Sure. And that's exactly it. Like anything you would normally do to keep this thing safe, because you would just lay magic on it, is just going to expedite its power because you're just feeding it. Right. It's a void for magic. All right. So they're like, well, they do some research and they try to figure out what can destroy it. And they determine that like a paladin of sufficient power with a holy weapon can actually cleave this thing in twain. Okay. Oh. Now they happen to know a paladin. One of the barons in this War of Four Barons they're going through, that's happening in the background, speaking of sandboxes, right, is a paladin, a high-level paladin. And he does have a holy sword. Okay. And they were like, no problem. They figured this out. They're like, we got this, guys. We'll just go to him. We'll have him chop the thing down, and we're done. Artifact destroyed. No probs.
Easy.
Right?
Easy.
Easy money. So they go to the guy's town, and they get there, and his servant is like, yeah, he's not here. Did you guys check first? And they're like, well, no, we just expected him to be here. And he's like, and his servant's like, there's a war on. He's the leader of a nation. involved in a war, and you thought he was just gonna be at home all the time? No, he's at the war, fighting the war. And they're like,
Ah,
well, where is he? And the guy's like, I don't know, man. On the front. It's a big war. What are you talking about? I can't tell you where he is. Like, I don't got this guy. Like, they didn't say this in game, but he's like, I don't have the dude low jacked. You know, it's not modern warfare, right? And so, that's an example of the world just happening around the PCs,
right,
right? It wasn't there waiting for them.
right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because no, that dude has his own concerns, his own people. He's got stuff he's taking care of. They like did a sending to him and are like, hey, we need your help. And he's like, okay, well, I'll be happy to help as soon as I'm done with this war.
right, right. Yeah, and that leads me to like remember a lot of these the worst versions of these come from the best of intentions for both of these from the amount of hours that we spent playing RPG video games.
Oh, yes. I wanted to make the MMO illusion. I'm glad you went here.
Um, and I won't touch MMOs, although they're a good example because I've got a better example than that. But like for the the roller coaster game, it is the expectation that I just keep going to the next screen and then I do fun thing. I keep going to the next screen. I do
Yep.
fun thing. By and large, most of the Final Fantasy games, right? You had some brevity in going from one city to the next or whatever, but you knew where to go next, and you're always going to your next place, and you got into fun things along the way, but you were mostly just going from A to B constantly. And that can lead to what I call GM autopilot. And you
Sure.
see this often with adventures out of books or even whole campaigns out of books.
Yep.
Is you have a pretty dire situation put in front of you. The GM, this is not their story. This is not their world. They likely have not read this book 4 times cover to cover, which they need to. If they want to know the motivations of the NPCs, they need to know what they're doing, where they are, why they do what they do, all this. So they're not interested in all of that. They turn the page when the page is to be turned, and they describe where you are now, and then they just sit there and wait for you to react.
Ding. Turn the page.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, okay, you go into that room. This is this room. Okay, do the thing. All right, you're done with the thing. The next room is this, and this is what you see, and you deal with that. Okay, and then that's it.
Yes. Yes. It becomes a lengthy PowerPoint presentation.
Right. Your game and playing something out of a book. I find that every good adventure that I've run out of a book or campaign that I've run out of a book or I've experienced as a player, it's not what was in the book that made it great. It was what the DM added or the twist they put on it or their angle, their perception of how it should run. And then it became enough of their own. And they had this book to lean on. So they did not have to spend the hundreds of hours to create everything from scratch, but they had something to lean on to tell the story that they wanted to tell. And now they have a place and a setting and players that to play that parts. That's the best version. But that is not what we often see out of books.
Right.
My other example of roller coastering done poorly, a common example, is the age-old watch what cool thing happens next in my story campaign.
Oh, God, yes. I've been in these games. Yep. Here we go. Okay.
AKA the GM just wants you to praise them for the awesome thing that they had because they are Tolkien reborn and their story is the best. And anything you want to do only will happen if it works with the story that they wanted to tell.
Yep.
And the problem with the roller coaster style games is that those 2 examples I gave you, the out of a book autopilot and the cool GM story that they can't wait to have you listen to them read from their novel.
You should have written a novel, not a D&D adventure campaign. Yep. Yeah.
You got 2. This is like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES, the water level. All around you are the zappy things. And it is near impossible not to touch a zappy thing either above you or below you. Okay. And these are those two zappy things. There's a reason why it's one of the hardest levels in all of classic gaming, because you are surrounded by it. For you to navigate through a roller coaster campaign and not fall into one of those two is incredibly difficult.
Yeah. I do appreciate that. One, you could have made the Battletoads reference, which I think the Battletoads water level is harder than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles water level, but nonetheless, that's fine. I
Both,
also
yeah.
appreciate that you could have made a classical allegory of Scylla and Charybdis, the two monsters that you have to sail between,
Yeah.
when the metaphor for this was originally done 2,300 years ago.
Still rings true today.
Yes. But nonetheless, we picked the TMNT water level. So that's fine. Okay. I mean, it's true. It's a good metaphor. It works.
All right.
You're
My example of sandbox games of video game worlds, why they suck, is any of the Fallout games, the Elder Scrolls games, any of I'm not blanking on the studio that makes all those games. And those are all sandbox games. And the reason why is there's so much lore in that world, those worlds, and there's so many interesting side tangents to get on. There's so many like just places to explore, and you just kind of quickly lose track of the story from when you left the vault, and you just run off in a direction and you have a blast. You're just like, oh my gosh, there's a weird little encampment over here. Oh my gosh, there's a thing. Let me go down in the sewer. Oh, we found a different vault and whatever. And it makes you think that if you do that and you just go off and do whatever you want in one random direction in your D&D sandbox game, it's going to be that fun. It is not. It is not. The relying on the world to hold up, to keep interest and engagement without story is a folly that you are going to fall into quickly. And oftentimes you find yourself in that desert. When I ran my first sandbox game, I literally did this and put them in a desert, and that's when I had this oh shit moment. So ironic there. It's like you have to be proactive. The GM has to be on top of things in a sandbox game much more, because you have to always be seeding those things. And if you are not careful, your players just do not care anymore. If you're running a game out of a book, they may just feel like they're on the rails, but at least an interesting thing will keep happening. And maybe they'll be like, oh, well, that's interesting that the story's going this way, or, oh, we get to go this cool place now. And it's all fleshed out. You're out in a freaking desert and you've been here for weeks or months and nothing has happened. And you finish this little side dungeon, but the side dungeon didn't connect to anything. And
it all feels yes. Things in a sandbox that aren't executed well can just feel incredibly unconnected. Like, what are we even doing here?
Right.
We just literally rolling around the world, like we're just sort of pest control here and there, and then that's it. There's no greater purpose. It can feel underwhelming. Yeah.
Right. And even if you wanted to, like, I'm going to set myself up for success for this, and I'm going to have the players just be OG adventurers, where they start off as pest control and they go wherever they want and they handle local issues. That will also run boring given enough time, unless you fold in a story that pushes them to a greater purpose.
Yep.
It can start that way. And that's a good way to kind of get your feet wet running this kind of game. But you have to be aware that you cannot rest on your laurels in that.
Yeah. I want to talk about a roller coaster gone wrong in my own game. So did you ever play the 5th edition? Wasn't called Against the Giants, but it was the remake of Against the Giants. I played
Giants. It. And it was a horrible roller coaster adventure for me as well.
Okay. So like, that the structure of the thing, right, is like there's a bunch of different giants, all the different giant tribes, the hill giants and the stone giants and the fire giants and the frost giants and eventually the storm giants, right? And the point is you're supposed to go and get like involved with one of them. There's also like a barbarian, the Uthgar barbarian. There's like a sort of side quest that's happening amongst all this with that. You're supposed to like get involved and you get a conch shell, right? And from like, if you go and defeat one of the giant tribes, if you get involved with one of those things, you'll get like a conch shell. You're supposed to blow that conch shell and it like teleports you to the storm giant queen. And she's like, oh, my dad is missing. Here's what's going on. And she like gives you the plot to then like go and do stuff. Yeah. Okay. So that roller coaster only works
if they blow the shell.
If they blow the shell, which we did not. we got the shell and we were like, well, we don't know what this is. And we were like, well, we identify, we do some work, we did like some divination. And the GM's like, oh, well, it's you get a lot of sense of like power and stuff like this and the fury of the storms off of it. And we're like, okay, cool. That goes in a bag. And then we never touched it. So we literally just went and did every one of the giants. Okay. So we did like the hill giants, we did the stone giants, we did the frost giants. We committed like frost giant genocide. Okay.
Tell me you're a GM that didn't read the book cover to cover without telling me you're a GM that didn't read the book cover to cover.
She read the book cover to cover. She was just unwilling to give us the next thing to do until we did the thing. She wouldn't tell us.
That's ridiculous.
Okay.
Ridiculous.
So, like, so we murdered our way through all this. We also did the barbarian thing. We did all of it. The only giants we didn't kill our way through was the fire giants because my character was like part of the Zentarum, and I had organized a backroom deal with the fire giants off camera for weapons and arms trading to the Zentarum. So every time the PCs were like, we should go deal with the fire giants, I was like, no, they're cool. We're good. We're good with them. We don't need to mess with them.
I got it figured out. You're right.
So the roller coaster just basically never went anywhere because we kept just going back up and down. Like we were stuck. It's those nightmares of like, somebody gets stuck on the top of a roller coaster thing and they're just like there and no one can come get there. The other people have to come get them. That's what happened. Right. At any rate, I think that I thought that was very funny because that game to this day is something we talk about, right? The ultimate bad guy or one of the big bad guys, right? In that game, like the Kraken and the whole cult, right? There's like that cult of the Kraken or whatever. We literally learned they existed. And the next adventure, we killed the Kraken and their cult leader. Because we had just done everything else so much, right? At any rate,
yeah, it is. It is like you need to be able to look at your book or your homemade adventure and see the 30,000-foot view and plant seeds earlier. Let information have weight, and you do that, and that's for either of these kinds of games, so that it has weight when it needs to. It has more impact. It helps them make decisions because they've had access to parts of information all throughout. There's you simply not giving the players any indication when they do all those checks on that conch that it is some kind of transport spell, and it doesn't seem to be like it's a trap. It's not a trap, and it doesn't seem to lead you into danger. And they held it in regard because it could transport them somewhere valuable. Like something like that, like let the story play itself out in the most dramatic way. Like, anyway, all right.
It was very funny. All right. I want to real quick just make the MMO point here.
Okay.
Because I did want to touch on this. One of my favorite MMO experiences was Ultima Online.
Okay.
When MMO started, there was sort of two directions. In the early years, there was two directions they could go. You have the UO model, which was pure sandbox. I don't know if you ever played Ultima Online, but it is sandbox in the truest sense of the word. Because there's a bunch of other humans going around doing stuff in that world too, right? You were definitely not the center of the story.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. You were just another adventurer in a world of adventurers going about getting into stuff. And like you could go anywhere, do anything, get into any trouble, fight anything. It didn't really use levels. It was a skill-based system, so you didn't have like, oops, I wandered into the area of level 40 monsters and I'm level 20. Wasn't that. Okay. And like you kill somebody, you can take all their stuff. This happened many times. You could murder other people in the game and take their stuff. And like, so I would do that and I'd take their runes, which they could mark to teleport places, and I'd just see where they went in the world. And I just teleport around the world. Where'd they go? Where was their spaces?
What was their story?
Yeah, that's why you never marked a teleport rune inside your house. Because if you did that and you were stupid enough and I could teleport in your house, then I could also rob your house. So a little lesson for you there. Yikes. Don't always teleport to the outside of your house. Anyways, and then you've got the WoW model, right? Which is the roller coaster. You're leveled, you're this, you go to this quest giver, they send you this quest giver to this zone, so on, right? It's a roller coaster, right? And you're on the ride.
Compared to modern MMOs, that classic MMOs is a harsh sandbox.
As WoW originally launched, sure.
Right.
It was much more sandboxy than modern stuff. Yes, I agree. But ultimately, it set the roller coaster model into play, right? Of what it is, and I find it fascinating because those do center you as the center of the world, right? Like, even though you know there are 50 other people who've just walked up to that NPC and gotten this quest, okay? The NPC is talking to you like you're the only person in the world.
Dude, they need
right?
a lot of Axebeak meat, okay? It's fine that everyone has to come bring back Axebeak meat. I'm here for that. I'm here for that.
Yes, sure. So I do think it's interesting because the world went and most modern like D&D adventures and a lot of big game company adventures have gone the way of the roller coaster in that way. They've learned from the video games that it's more engaging. It brings people along. It lowers the bar of what you need to know to run the game, right? And so you get a lot of these books that are just much more of like, you start here, you go through the story, you end here, right? It's the trajectory. It's an arc. And that's probably the best way to think about it, right? Like, it's Benoit Blanc's statement of like, it's the mystery is just I throw the ball in the air, it will come to land. I can, like, the arc is the arc. It can't be anything else. Okay. Gravity is what it is, right? Whereas in a sandbox, nothing's getting thrown in the air. You don't know what's going to go. It's chaos ball, right? It's like, it's the break in pool.
Sure.
Versus the arc of the baseball. Okay.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
All right.
So let's dig into. We've been pretty negative thus far. So let's talk about the kinds of things. One, like what's good for your group. What do you kind of gravitate towards as a player or as a GM? What should you look for, or how do you interact with these games in a positive way? And then finally, what is our preferred way to either play as a player or as a GM, and kind of how we've evolved to the kinds of games that we run or we like to participate in as players?
Yep. So I want to first start by saying, of course, we've talked about these things as a dichotomy, but of course that is a false dichotomy. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have these two things intermingle. So for example, you can have the sort of sandboxy roller coaster where there's like 5 different areas that the PCs will be in over the course of the campaign, right? You can imagine, like, think of them as like zones of the game. And within that space, the PCs could get into a lot of stuff, right? They could explore this thing, talk to these people, do this thing, do this quest, do this dungeon, not do any of that stuff, or just jump ahead, right? All of that's within the possibility, okay? But they're sort of, they're open within the walls of this particular thing, right? And then once they're done there, they transition. There's still some kind of overarching story, and they transition to the next area, and it's sandboxy again, right? Okay.
Yeah.
You could also go the other way around with that, where it's quite loose. It is a sandbox, but the PCs keep running into intermittently threads that you have planted throughout the world that speak to a larger meta plot and can draw them into something more significant, right? So it's still mostly open. They can go anywhere they want, and they will experience different things.
Right.
Like, it was not written.
Right.
But what is consistent is you have some kind of little thread that you have that you can spice around the game, right? That you just kind of like glitter dusted over the world.
Yes.
That they will just run into those little pieces of glitter around and see that that other meta plot is still happening. That's the sort of like more sandboxy roller coaster as opposed to the more roller coastery sandbox.
Yeah. And they're typically they're like a 70-30, 60-40 kind of a thing. Which one get the slightly more weight to it. And I think those are the healthier versions of the game, or the games that done best, or the ones that you find most memorable when you look back at your time playing D&D, that they would fall into one of those two categories. And the good thing about having that split is that you have the ability to shift between one and the other, taking the lead as necessary as your story or as your progression or your flow or however you want to run your game dictates. You can pull and push your levers and knobs to let those take control, because you've not established or called it just this X, right? And feel tied to it.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned like advice for GMs. Yeah. And I think this is an important thing. Okay. I think if you're going to do the roller coaster game, you said, especially like whether it's out of a book or you're going to write it homebrew, there's two critical things, and they're the opposite of the problems you said earlier, right? One is you have to know the thing really well.
Yes.
Don't make it into a PowerPoint presentation that you're just like, well, let's see what's on the next slide. Oh, okay, we're talking about this now, right?
Yep.
That's the description that you were giving, right? The other is you still do have to have some level of flexibility. So like you can write your whole story.
Mm-hmm.
You can write the beginning, middle, and end, but you shouldn't write every word of dialogue.
Yeah.
Right?
I write, if my story is told in 3 acts, so it's a trilogy, each act, each book in the series is just a series of somewhere between 4 and 7 bullet points. And those bullet points will be hit in that order, how they're hit, how they're exposed, and where the players are at, and what decisions they've made have that lead them to hitting those bullet points are kind of inconsequential because that's their decisions. But as long as those X number of bullet points are hit, then the story can be told. And if
I think you want to write like the key scenes.
Yeah.
That's the key, right? Like, so you could like, many times when I've written these kinds of things, I will write out fully the key scenes that I know they're going to run into as they progress through the story.
Right.
First confrontation with the big bad guy, meeting the king and his daughter that's going to get kidnapped, that's going to spur the plot forward, right? Or whatever, I don't know, something, right? But like amongst those bullet points, I'm going to write whole scenes, whole arcs, but the rest is going to be fuzzy still, slushy, where I can move it around.
Yeah, and I mean, I even go so far as to say that none of that is sacred. Like I've
100%.
changed an entire campaign story arc or what the finale is or who the bad guy is. I've done that because you're listening to what the players draw them into it. Something we've talked about before. What inspires them? What do they push after? What are they attached to in your world? Well, then that becomes the important thing now. And now how do I adapt? If you are so in love with the own story that you've made, where you have every detail figured out, you are not going to be able to separate for yourself from that and see what the players are doing that draw them in. So yeah, you're absolutely right. If it's something out of a book, you need to be able to sit down and give somebody an elevator pitch for each chapter in the book and what's the important things that happen in here. It's like you should be able to pass the quiz before you can start.
That's
not
right.
You need to know
here's the key moments, the critical things, the important information, the important people
that you need to know all of that for the entire book before session 1. And the reason why is you need to be able to draw on your memory in the back of your head of like, oh, the princess is actually going to turn coat later on in the book. And I know
she didn't get kidnapped. In fact, it was all a plot to overthrow the king, right? Where she's in love with the Capulet or whatever.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so by you knowing that will affect how you play her or what she goes through or what happens to her earlier on, because you need her to be in place Y at point Z, and if you mess with that, and to me, it's more importantly that the character's motivations and where the direction is so you can play it out before it comes right in front of their face. The last thing I like is that every time a piece of information is hit the players is the moment it matters. That game, it just gets exhausting. It's just like, oh, this is the bad guy. This is the time we fight the bad guy. Okay, well, here's a new sub boss. He works under the big bad guy. Now's the time you meet him. Now's the time you fight him to the death. Like, how often do we keep doing this where everything that matters is the thing that's right in front of our nose and we don't get any information? It's why movies are so that grip us, especially dramas and thrillers and stuff in that nature, is because of the seeding of information that's built up over time, that you see things unfold and you don't know all the answers at the beginning. It's building everything up. And so if you're running it out of a book, you need to know it well enough so you can be proactive at the session and listen and react. If you're doing your own thing, first of all, I would say find dungeons, find short adventures, find whatever that you can beg, borrow, and steal and reskin so you're not doing everything. But again, it's about being present at the session and not being focused on telling them everything you think
you should be learning the stuff the same time they're learning the stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the sandbox side, you're like, it is going to be a higher bar as a GM,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it can be very rewarding. The key here is you prep as little as is necessary and have as much as possible available. Let me unpack that. Okay. The PCs exist somewhere in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're somewhere. Okay. There are towns and villages and whatever dungeons and things around. Have an understanding of the environment above all else, and like what are the potential adventures they could get into, the NPCs they could meet, things like that. Like have a smattering of those interesting things that they could discover. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the critical word. What are the discoveries in this area? That could be a plot, an adventure, a dungeon, an NPC, an ally, right? Whatever. Okay. And figure out kind of where those are and where those sit. And then think about what of those, if any, are going to be affected by the passage of time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, well, okay, in this general area where they are, the lizard men and the goblins are having a war, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the PCs do nothing or don't get involved in that, then eventually the lizard men win and take
Mm-hmm.
over the goblins area. Okay. And so what they'll find when they do go down there is they'll find the remnants of the goblins, not the goblins, right?
Yeah. Seeing that
And
is
so
cool.
that kind of thing is the stuff that you really need to know. So it's just a bunch of bullet points. The other thing you can have is just like your best friend is anything of random tables, random names for people they'll meet, random little adventures you could just drop in, or like a little mini dungeon or a little this or a little challenge, random NPCs, all that kind of stuff, right? And then figure out what they latch onto, right? And then those become things you then seed around the world in the future. You never know what's gonna catch in the sandbox, but once it does, like, then that's a tool. I keep since the current game I'm running is a sandbox, I keep a little notebook next to me. Okay. And anytime they attach onto an NPC or I see a plot point that could come back in the future, I make a note. And it's just under my little notebook section of future things that need to come back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so important. Yeah. And that list, anything that goes on that list, it's because it was the PCs like that interacted, were excited, spent more time with, seemed engaged with. If that isn't the factor, then it shouldn't go on that list. It's all directly on what they connected with, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, that list
absolutely
is
right.
That's one of the bigger level ups that I had in my DMing over the years, was like, oh, they're telling me what they like and what they want.
Yep.
You know,
just
I
listen,
want to bring it back.
And then make a note for that. It can come back. If it comes back 5, 6, 10, 15 sessions later, okay, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, it's this guy. All right. I remember this guy. He was cool. I'm glad this guy's back. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to do, we want to do it. We want to do whatever that dude wants to do. Oh, good. Because that dude wants to do the thing that was important to the story that I was trying to connect back to. Boom. We got there.
Exactly. Those NPCs become your little helpers, your little tools that are going to actually draw your PCs back into whatever kind of where you want them to go.
Right.
You can nudge, and that's one of the nudge tools. Yeah. Right. When you're running a sandbox, you're often going to want to nudge people. You have to very proactively nudge. I will say, as you mentioned earlier, and this is worth putting a pin on, you need to know your group.
Yeah.
Okay. If your group doesn't have proactive people who want to like get after it and get high engaged, probably lean more toward the roller coaster side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and that can be more of an 80-20 or 70-30. Where like you're still mixing it up, and you're still kind of getting them more experience with, and just enough to where they're enjoying that feeling of not every decision is made for them. All right, so that's good. My last thing I want to talk about is how I deal with the sandbox structure and storytelling, and relating that to my favorite way to run a game, and I would say probably my favorite way to play in a game, if run correctly. Every time I have a session for a sandbox focused game, so usually my favorite would be about a 70-30, maybe 60-40, leaning more towards sandbox. Sure. And what I do is I run a game where there is a roller coaster story arc that's happening over the course of time that is going to happen regardless of the PCs existing or not. So this, world's at risk now, and here's all the things that will happen over time because of that. And so that is the roller coaster aspect of it. And that is, these story points are going to happen whether or not you live or die tomorrow. And that in and of itself, once players realize that, they see that they have room to breathe. They have room to make decisions, and they have room to weave in and out and affect the story in the way that they want to, and not feel like it's all on their shoulders all the time, where it's always an NPC turning to them to solve the problem.
Exactly.
And that's a really good feeling, right? And it puts them in a place where they feel more ownership and more excitement in their own decision making. So that's the basics of how I like to run the game. So the roller coaster aspect is that those story points. The sandbox aspect is that they are not tied to them in any formal structure. And then what I do is I have 2 sets of bullet points every single session we sit down and play. The one set is just always one singular bullet point. I need to connect this part of the story that's going on in the world somewhere that's important to the main story. They need to touch that or hear about that in some way before the session is over. Because if I go multiple sessions without having them feel the impact of the story that's continuously going over the passage of time, they get further removed. They're not interested. They don't feel direction. They don't feel like they've got choices on where to go. If you don't hit them every single session, you will lose them. So that's list number 1. List number 2 is usually 2 to 4 bullet points. And these are fun little interesting side stories that may be connected to that main one, maybe not. And that is, I weave those in as I feel necessary. These are kind of the glitter that you were talking about, but I have more control over my glitter because I'm like, it feels organic. The key for me for sandbox games,
yeah. You're not actually just throwing it and sprinkling it around. You've placed the pieces. Yes.
Right. The key with sandbox is the players feel like everything is randomly generated dungeons, but in actuality, that's way more work, and you have less control over telling the story. Instead, make it always feel they get to decide where they ended up, what town they went to, what dungeon they decided to explore, what cavern they decided to stick their head into. But when they did, they got some connection to this side story, this interesting little bit that maybe, do they want to pursue that or not? They have the choices. But those 2 to 4 things I will sprinkle in every session. Typically, if I do those couple of things, I make sure the main story point is hit and those sprinkles go on, they take control. Even in a not highly proactive group of players, they will feel like they've got control. They will feel like they have choices, and they will feel like the world will react based on what they do. So that's the kind of game I really enjoy running, is let them interact with your story, but don't let that story get out of arm's reach.
Love it. Yeah. So the first game I DM'd a lot of games, but I remember, I still have the notebooks for the very first game I ever wrote beginning to end, like a campaign. It filled 3 college notebooks. You know what I'm saying? Like handwritten, every box text, every line of dialogue, every NPC, every magic item. I even had an NPC glossary at the end where I had written all my NPCs and their motivations and stuff like that, their stats. Okay.
To be young and have all the time in the world.
Yeah, indeed. Right. Yeah. And I ran that campaign and it was a lot of fun, but that was very much a roller coaster game, right? I had written out every thing they were going to run into. Right. And since that time, I've become someone who bucks against the roller coaster much more. I had a friend, Jeff, long time, still a friend. I just haven't seen him in a while. He moved away. He rode. There's a roller coaster park here in Ohio called Cedar Point. Very famous place for roller coasters. One of the best roller coaster parks in the world. And they have classically held the title for like having the tallest, fastest roller coasters at many points in time. And at this point in time, there was I think it was called like the Magnum or something was the tallest, fastest one. And Jeff got on that ride, and he was second car from the front. And if you know anything about a long roller coaster like that, it means you hang for a long time when you go up over the first hill, because it's not until like the last car clicks that it'll shoot down the big hill, right? So you're just kind of up there very slowly. So when Jeff got buttoned into the thing, the person comes around, he put his arms under the slightly under the bar, so that way what didn't lock all the way. Okay. And when they got up to the top of the hill, he could lift the bar, and he lifted the bar slightly, and he unbuckled himself and stood up, and he went, "I'm going to jump." Okay. And freaked everybody out. Now he wasn't, but he then the thing clicked and he sat down and went back to his, and then the roller coaster continued. But he certainly made what was a roller coaster into a much different experience for everybody else on the ride that day, scaring the living bejesus out of, I imagine, everybody else in that car. That's been my experience where I always go now with roller coasters. I'm bucking against it, threatening to jump at all points in time. Okay.
We just lost. I lost that entire story. It just froze, and it said reestablishing connection.
I'm pretty sure that everybody else heard it because mine never went down. I was good the whole time.
Okay, then it's just me that missed the story. So
Yeah.
wait, so the summary is, because I was actually really interested in what's going to happen, because he's still alive, so he didn't fly off the thing.
Correct. He's still alive. Yes. He stood up, threatened to jump, scared everybody, and then the last thing clicked, and he slammed himself back down and pulled the bar down, and then rode the roller coaster normally. Wow. Very, very scary thing to do. Yes. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Do not do that.
One-way ticket to jail there. Okay.
Correct. But the point is that like he made that roller coaster into a very different experience for everybody who was on that ride, right?
Yes.
And that's often how I am with roller coasters, because I'm always bucking, trying to do my own thing, starting my own sandbox. When we ran Out of the Abyss, okay, the thing where like the demon lords are all over the place and is a very, very linear sort of bookish adventure, I turned it into the most sandbox thing because I was like striking business deals with all these people, starting underground commerce, opening up merchant lanes. Like, none of that's in the book. I'm just like, this is what we're doing, guys. We're on a different thing. Like, yeah, these demons are happening. Whatever. Who cares about that? That's secondary.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta have a DM that can handle that very easily. You can have a DM that just says no to all that, and then you're just miserable at the table.
Yeah, fortunately, the GM in that case is one of the guys in our group who also plays in like a regular LARP. And obviously LARP is like a very open-ended thing where anything can sort of change and happen. So they're good improvers. Anyways, I say all that to say I lean towards the sandbox thing because where I've come and what I really enjoy is the feeling that you're exploring a real living, breathing world, right? Where you can matter and make yourself important and stuff like that and become someone great or whatever and help people. But at the same time, there is still a world. It's still happening. And those people are living fully realized lives. And also because I've turned my roller coaster intentions toward the marathons, right?
Sure.
That's when we do a marathon and we have like a structured 3 days of gaming. That's when I write my roller coasters.
That makes sense. Sure. Yeah.
Right. Because I have 48 hours or whatever, 42 hours to tell this whole story. That's it. We're not going any longer. I need to hit certain beats. We got to be in and out.
Yep.
So to me, I think both can be valid, but it's about, again, the medium is the message, right? In that short frame context, a roller coaster works perfectly. For a long-term campaign where I'm like really exploring a world, I want the sandbox. I want to go to wherever we want to go. I want to explore different corners. I want to see what's happening in this place. I want to find unusual things, feel like we discovered something. And that comes the best when you have a little more freedom to explore. So that's where I come down.
Ooh, I dig it. Well, there it is. We have solved it. I'm curious, Gazeboids, if you're listening to us on the podcast locale, thank you, first of all, for doing that. But second of all, pull us up on YouTube and put your comment in. What kind of game do you prefer? Or have you only played one style or the other? What kind of game do you like to play? What are the things that you don't like about one of these or the other? I really want your feedback. That's really interesting to read those things. And as we enter the holiday season, I do have a slight ask. This is your Christmas gift to Vince and I. First of all, thank you for listening and watching. We are now, 27, 28 episodes into this weekly, and we appreciate you so much. And if we could ask you one thing, and that would be to share the existence of this podcast with somebody else that you know that plays D&D. Could be somebody that you played with as a kid, could be your local group, could be on a Facebook group or a Discord group that you're a part of. please help share our podcast. We have been at it now, like I said, about half a year, and we're appreciative of all of you, and we want to reach more people. We really want to see how much we can grow this, and we've got a lot of fun ideas, guest ideas, topic ideas, spicy ideas for 2026, and we'd love to have you with us. Thanks for so much once again for joining us, and we'll be back in 2026.
Bye-bye.